wrote, particularly Ephesians 5:29, that no one ever hated his own body. I have hated my own body for most of my life. I was bullied for my looks and weight as a child, felt neglected by my parents because of it, and developed such intense self-loathing that I hurt myself, abused my body, and even starved myself. I know I'm not alone. Many people hate their own bodies and harm themselves in various ways. This makes it hard to believe. Paul is speaking literally when he says no one ever hated their own body. If Paul were alive today, wouldn't he see how widespread this problem is? Was he speaking figuratively, or was the statement more reflective of his time when body hatred might not have been as common? What do you think Paul meant in this passage?
That is an important question. It's right at the heart of Christian hedonism. It's right at the heart of understanding marriage. One of the reasons I feel that its weight is because it's just so easy for us Bible lovers, like me, I love the Bible, to repeat what the Bible says as though it presented no problems whatsoever, when for the ordinary reader who didn't grow up on the Bible, reading it maybe for the first time, the Bible has sentences in it that really sound out of sync with real human experience, like this one. So let me read the context as we get it in front of us, and then try to understand how Paul might answer this question, because I think there's an answer at several levels. In the context, he's comparing Christ's love for the church, his bride, to a husband's love for his wife. That's the comparison. He says Christ is sanctifying the church so that he might present the church to himself in splendor. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church, because we are members of his body. And then he quotes Genesis 2:24. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. That is, the same body. This mystery is profound, and I am saying that it refers to Christ and the church. So the argument is that a husband and wife, as God has designed it, are one flesh. So that when a husband loves his wife, he's loving himself. And then he introduces the premise, no one ever hates his own flesh. And he draws out the conclusion, therefore no Christian should hate his wife, but instead nourish and comfort, cherish her. But our friend, who doesn't give us her name, I understand that, sent this question. She said, I developed such intense loathing that I hurt myself, abused my body, even starved myself. And she asks, if Paul were alive today, wouldn't he see how widespread this problem is? So Paul says, no one ever hated his own flesh, and she says, I do. So, first, let's remind ourselves what Paul knew about self-harm. We're so often prone to think that our ages are unique, our time is unique, and we have different or better knowledge. He knew first that Judas killed himself. And you would think that if there were an extreme expression of self-hate, it would be self-murder. Second, Paul knew about religions that practice self-mutilation, like the Baal worshippers in 1 Kings 18. They cried aloud and cut themselves after their custom with swords and lances until the blood gushed out upon them. That's the way they tried to get attention from their God. Third, Paul was aware in his own day, and he explicitly opposed it in Colossians 2:21, chapter 23, that some religious practices were intended to harm the body. He said, these practices have indeed an appearance of wisdom in promoting self-made religion and asceticism and severity to the body, but they are of no value in stopping the indulgence of the flesh. So Paul doesn't need to learn from the 21st century about self-harm. He was aware of self-mutilation and suicide. He was even aware that his own body was considered contemptible by his opponents in 2 Corinthians 10:10. After all that Paul had been through, just think of it, so many imprisonments, so many whippings and scourgings and beatings and late nights and fastings and shipwrecks and dangers and stoning, I do not doubt that when he looked in the mirror, he did not like what he saw. In fact, most people don't like what they see, right? I mean, face it, most people do not like what they see in the mirror. That's why they work so hard to change it. So, what did Paul mean when he said, he who loves his wife loves himself, for no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it? Let me give you two levels of answers. The simplest answer would be to infer that Paul was speaking the way the Proverbs do regularly, namely giving a common sense generalization about life. The Proverbs do this over and over. Train up a child in the way he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it, generally speaking. Proverbs 22:6. Or, honor the Lord with your wealth, then your barns will be filled with plenty, generally speaking. Proverbs 3:9 and 10. We know these are generalizations and not universal truths without any exceptions, because the Bible itself makes plain that God often acts in other ways. In fact, when you think about the friends of Job, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, their basic error was they didn't see these as generalizations but as absolutes. And so they clobbered Job and said, you have to be a sinner because it's going bad for you. So we could say rightly, I think, that when Paul said, no one ever hated his own flesh, he means, generally speaking, that's the way people are.